Welcome to More Action, the podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, and professionals. I'm your host, Sheley Brien, and together we have candid conversations with industry leaders to uncover valuable wisdom and lessons learned. My hope is you use these lessons to intentionally take more action in business and life. I hope you share and enjoy. All right, let's talk about something that I think gets overlooked too often, but is incredibly important to your productivity, to your efficiency throughout your day, and really the path in getting your goals. And that comes down to schedule and time utilization, right? And this episode isn't necessarily going to be about hacks, because you can find that on social media. You could find that, maybe reading like a quick little Reddit article. You can find it elsewhere. What I'm going to provide you here is a little bit of a mindset perspective in how you view your time and how you're using it. And the reality is to just get you to kind of challenge yourself. Does this make sense? Is this the best use of my time? And then, at the end, I'm going to leave some actionable tips, but also another perspective shift. I think the more that we can expand our perspective, the better that we can be and evolve. And so today's podcast episode here on More Action is all about that. How can we leverage our schedule and the way that we view our schedule to be more productive and more efficient with the time we each get every single day? Now, before I dive into it, this is one that you definitely want to stay all the way through. I have to call out because I opened up the podcast app on Apple today and I saw another review. And so I just have to say thank you so much. When you take that quick second to hit the 5 stars and leave a sentence or two, I know it might be like 15 seconds of time, but just know that you are doing 2 things. Number 1, you're helping this podcast reach more people. And number 2, you freaking make me feel really great. And I just got to say, that's awesome. And I appreciate you. But this one I want to call out. This is from Brooke RC, and it says, amazing and valuable. Sheley delivers tremendous value in her podcast episodes. She brings on expert guests in their respective fields, and the show is packed with actionable steps and insights. I love that. And I have 3 guests booked in the coming few weeks, a few more that we're just trying to work on scheduling. I'm really bringing a different perspective with the podcast rebrand. It's not going to be the fluff and stuff that you hear and people that just doing podcast tours to do podcast tours. These are actual business owners that are doing big things, and we might not even know about them. Those are the people that I want to bring on the show. So first off, thank you, Brooke RC, for that. I absolutely love it. Now let's dive into the show here, because this one is going to be, full of information. So you're definitely going to want to save it, share it with your friends. So I'm brought this back. I heard about, and then I researched and read an article. I'm actually going to link it down in the show notes for you, from Paul Graham. And it's about the maker or manager schedule. And just to kind of give you some broad knowledge on that, I'm going to kind of give a few different people's perspectives on schedules. Very, highly successful people in their own right. Some are very public, some are not. And then what I'm doing and how I'm evolving. Do I have it perfect? Hell no. But am I always looking how I can make it better? Absolutely. And I'm going to share that with you in hopes that it helps you. So with Paul Graham, when he talks about the manager's schedule, this is like someone that books out their schedule, 15-minute increments, half-hour increments, just those little short time commitments. I've heard it be called like the zebra schedule, right? You look at your calendar, it looks really pretty. You have every single color and it's like all these stripes. And it feels really good because you can see all the meetings and you can be like, wow, I feel really good and I'm so busy. And you basically kind of do like a plug and play, where you find a hole in your schedule and you plug someone or some task in that hole. Now, you are basically working in a manager's perspective or a manager's framework, which some people, those roles are very, very needed, but you are handling everyone else's problems. You are letting everyone else's schedule essentially run yours. And by the end of the day, you might have this feeling of despair where you're like, wow, I felt really good in the morning because look at how busy I am working on my business or working in my role at this organization. But you feel like I didn't get anything done today. I was in meetings back to back to back, and I was just working on my business and all these different other things were driving my schedule instead of working on your business, making big changes, creating opportunities to really go deep and let yourself wander. So your meetings are running your day, not you. That's a manager's schedule. And again, I'm not saying that one is good or bad. These are very different ways of managing it. Sometimes when we're on job sites and we're working with different subcontractors, if you're new to the show, we own a construction company here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we work with businesses. And sometimes we're going back and forth, and we are at the whim of other people's schedules on those days. That makes sense sometimes. But what Paul Graham goes into on the maker's schedule, the way that he is separating these two, is that there's big blocks of time that are uninterrupted. So you might schedule it in half-day increments versus a manager is half-hour increments. And your break might be a quick break where you actually step away from the desk. You go outside, you play with your pets, you have lunch, you get to spend time with your kids or call a loved one. The thing is with a maker schedule, meetings will blow up the day because let's say even on a day where you block off half of your morning and you have your zebra schedule, your manager's schedule in the second half of the day. Naturally, anybody is going to be thinking about, oh, did I prepare for this meeting? I don't want to be late. How much time do I have? Can I still, be able to finish this big task that I set on this big block? So your focus can wander and not go all in on that big time block that you gave yourself. So truly, a maker schedule, it's like two big blocks of time, zero interruptions. And you only focus on maybe 1 to 2 large tasks where you get into it, you get in a flow. This creates a creative state of mind. You can maybe look at problems or challenges or opportunities with a different mindset because you have the time and nothing else is weighing on it. Now, I think I love that Paul Graham really, I think it's perfect how he names this as far as maker schedule and a manager schedule. And again, one is not better than the other. However, I do believe that depending upon what you are doing, one is better than the other. So you might flex between these two in different periods of time. Now, he goes on that, like I shared, really flexing between the two within one day is not ideal because you can't be as productive in your maker schedule, your say morning block, if you're worried about your afternoon meetings. Now, I will say that you definitely, like I shared, do not want to cross these. And the way that you can do this, and I love it because what Paul says is just so blatantly obvious, but sometimes we try to make it harder than it needs to be, is that how do you manage it? How do you change it? How do you get into one of these schedules? And it's really creating office hours, taking back your schedule under your control. And that means putting up boundaries. That means saying no. That means certain meetings scheduling out farther, which in reality, sometimes you got to think about that. Is this a fire sale meeting that someone is trying to put on my schedule that really isn't that big of a deal, but they think it is? How can I help them see that we can move this out and cover it at this time? And again, it comes back to you. What can you control is you can control your schedule and your office hours and taking back your calendar. Now, I want to offer two additional perspectives just to kind of, paint the picture, because I think that there's no perfect way to do it. It's how you look at it based upon your goals. So I just shared Paul Graham's manager schedule, maker schedule. I want to talk real quick about Dan Sullivan. So Dan Sullivan, he was a co-author in the 10X is Easier Than 2X with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I've talked about this book before, but he talks about his schedule. He relates it to entertainment, the entertainment industry and their schedules. And he uses full days. He uses free days, focus days, and buffer days. The free days are like recover days. Those are like maybe high creativity days. Those are days that you are investing in yourself. I know him and his wife, what he shares in the book is they actually book their free days for the entire year. And those days are off limit to have any meeting or anything else placed on them. Now, focus days are those high focus days, zero disruptions. This would be the maker's schedule, like Paul Graham is talking about. That is where you're creating large results or significant results in your business. This would be like an entertainer as they're practicing their script or getting ready to get into a role. That's how he compares it. And then the last day that Dan uses on his schedule is buffer days. And those are like the preparation days, organization days. Those are where the meetings are placed. So he does it by day. And that's how he's able to manage having these free days, the focus days, and the buffer days. And within this book, there is numerous examples given about how organizing your schedule like this increases your productivity and efficiency. And really, at the end of the day, it's so nice when you have your schedule, your office hours, and then you communicate out that to everybody else. Now there's no second guessing. Oh, is this or is that? You don't even have to have those hard discussions because this is what it is. Now, one thing that Dan always shares is that you want to stack similar activities together on your schedule. So it goes back to like, don't cross streams. I feel it's like Ghostbusters, right? Don't cross the streams. Is that you don't want to mix these two schedules on the same day, because when you think about it, if you're in a creative mode in the morning, let's say, and then you got to go to, some financial review or maybe some other administrative tasks, you will be ineffective during that creative period. You might not feel it, and it might not be like, I shouldn't say ineffective. You will absolutely be less effective because you're thinking about those administrative tasks that you still have to do that are still on your schedule. So he says, stack similar activities together. Don't cross the streams. Now, one last person before I share what I do is Ed Mylett. And this is a quick one, and I might misquote this one. I just remember it from a couple of years ago when I first heard it from him. I know that he does talk about this, is he compresses each day basically into 3 days. So he turns one day into 3 days. So in a given 5-day period, he will actually complete almost 15 days. So when I talk about efficiency, productivity, and being able to do more, he is having 3 days per day, and he blocks it out in time. And this is something that I actually adopted when it comes to that early morning. He has like a 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. schedule. That's when he's investing in himself. He's reading, he's working out, he's maybe learning something new. He's quiet, he's walking on the beach. He lives in Newport. Like, he's investing in himself, and that's that first part of his day. Then the middle of his day is a normal work day, 9 to 4 p.m. Depending upon the day, he is either a maker or he is a manager. He has obviously grown his organization, so I feel like he would stay more in that maker time frame, but I guarantee you that he has those manager days mixed in there as well. And then his third part of the day is that like 5 to 9 p.m. And this is, again, I could be misquoting these exact times, so don't blow me up or whatever, but he blocks it out into 3 days, or 3 days per one day. So his third day within the first one is that 5 to 9 p.m. So he reflects on the day, prepares for the next day, and spends time with his family. So it's been very nice for him to increase his output he is making each day matter that much more. So think about it too. If you are turning one day essentially into 3 days of work, could you imagine, like, right? Like if you're not feeling awesome one day, or if your schedule gets away from you, or something happens that derails you, you're not just losing one day, you're losing 3 days. So if you want some motivation to stay focused, this is absolutely something I would recommend having a mindset perspective change on, so that you know each day is so freaking valuable to your goals in the business that you are creating or the career that you are creating. Now, let me share what I have, and then I have one last thing at the end. So you definitely want to stay all the way to the end. If you haven't yet, I'm getting so close to like my first 100 subscribers over on YouTube. So I'd love for you to come over there. You can see me talking to the camera, waving my hands around. I'm going to actually be implementing more visual aids over there. You're going to be seeing all kinds of good stuff. So jump over and subscribe. But for me, I've had a huge, huge shift in my scheduling, both on like days and time of days and how I manage it. And I had to move past some beliefs that I had previously to be able to make this happen, because I was believing some things like we got to do everything early in the morning. Everyone's good and fresh in the morning. Let me get to everybody in the morning. And me too. I'm definitely a morning person, not a night owl. But I was like, I believed that the most productive work was only done in the morning. And by work, I meant like the meeting. So I was like in that manager schedule and just letting everybody else, like if I really wanted to meet with someone and there was a hole in my schedule, you bet I put it in there. So I had to kind of go through some stories that I was telling myself about that were limiting my schedule flexibility. And then I was able to become more productive and stay focused in the task and work on larger things rather than little bits and pieces. I don't know about you, but I'm sure you're a high achiever, and those little dopamine hits of like crossing off your to-do list feel really good in the moment. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't get these 3 big things done, and now I have to push them a day. So I don't like that feeling. So I had to really kind of dig in and be like, what is preventing me from making these changes? And so I actually adopted essentially a mix of all 3 of the people that I just mentioned, because I think that each one, depending upon the season that I'm in or the period of growth that we are in with our construction company or this podcast, I had to have that flexibility. So for me, I schedule out 2 creative days for podcasting. And my other big thing is creating collaborations. That's again for the podcast and or collaborations within our construction company. And so these 2 creative days, I do not have, if there is a meeting, it would be internally. Now, the other thing that I created is moving all meetings to the afternoon. I do not take any meetings before 1 p.m. for me, because I have kids, so I got to get them after school. 1 p.m. for me, because I want that time in the morning so that I can be most productive on my schedule. I know that sounds really simple, you guys, like, oh, you just moved them to the afternoon. That was a really hard thing that I had to do, but I worked through, and I was like, why the heck haven't I done this sooner? So I have only afternoon meetings, no morning meetings. The morning meeting is when I am at my best. So I want to invest my time into my company and my podcast. Now, I have no meetings scheduled on Mondays and Fridays. Those are planning, those are big dive days. So I bookend my week. Unless there is an emergency, I bookend my week. That is my me time to get really deep and really focused on my company. Now, I also have no more than, I see these are boundaries. So these are little things that I set for myself that also my team knows that I have no more than 3 lunch meetings per week. And I also have, remember how Ed Mylett has that kind of 3-tier, 3 days into one day? I definitely adopted a form of that. And the early morning, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you, you need to have an early morning routine and you need to have this and you should this and should that. Forget it. But what works for me is that the time that I can invest into reading, which I absolutely love and has been such an important part of my growth, is first thing in the morning. So I get up early before anyone in my house. I have at least, oh gosh, a solid hour to hour and a half before anyone else gets up. That is my investment in me. That is also when I do my cardio workout versus afternoons are now for my gym workout, my lifting workout. So that morning time is what I invest into myself. Now, one thing that if you're following me on Instagram, you may have seen me share this in the stories a little bit. You know, when you have these habits that you've been doing, right? Maybe it's a social media scrolling habit per se. I'm speaking to myself that you might need some help. And maybe that's an accountability person. Maybe that's setting boundaries. Maybe that's putting your phone elsewhere or doing something like that. For me, I went to technology and I found this Opal app. I'll actually link it in there. I am not affiliated with Opal at all. This is not a paid link or anything like that. But this app, you can set deep focus periods and apps that it will completely close you out. You cannot get into it. You can set different levels of focus, like deep focus. I can't get into it. And so every day, literally from 8:30 to 12:30, I cannot get into a social media app. It's actually been one of the best things for me because I found I would just grab it. I had a habit. I had this habit and I had to break it and I needed help. And instead of depending on anyone else, I just was like, what can change the way that I am using technology in the morning? And that was actually totally creating like a limiting feature on it. And so I use the Opal app. That app has insurmountably tied with my schedule, has completely increased my productivity and efficiency every single week. I love that app because it doesn't let me do the thing that I want to do, which is sometimes scroll mindlessly. And it's great because you can track it. You can see how you're doing. You can see areas of opportunities or certain times that maybe you are grabbing your phone too much. So, okay, enough with the Opal app. Now, I hope that taking you through these three very different perspectives, sharing what I do on my schedule, I just hope it helps you rethink how you are scheduling. And if there's room for improvement based upon your goals or roles, there's no one way. You could hear I took a combination of all three. Now, I was using Dan Sullivan and Ed Mylett's kind of theories first, but then the perspective change with the maker versus manager from Paul Graham, that solidified it for me. So I hope that this like challenges you. And if it's kind of like, oh, Sheley, you're full of BS, fine, move on. But if you're like, oh man, I feel that, feel like listen to that and question maybe if you had something like me that you were believing about your schedule that was preventing you from making the changes. Now, before I go, here's the one tip that I am going to leave you with. And again, I hope that you just love this episode, share it out. That's how we get the word out here on More Action. But if you guys, and I say you guys and girls, you know that, whatever, is if you are trying to connect with someone new, maybe someone that you want to do business with, maybe someone that you just want to connect with and learn from, or maybe that you want to help them. Do you know what type of schedule they are operating in? We are always thinking about ourselves, but what type of schedule are they operating in? If it is someone that is ahead of you that you are trying to learn from, connect with, perhaps collaborate with, and they are a maker, and you're asking them to grab coffee, you are literally digging your own grave. So remember, be different. Do something different. Ask them what type of schedule they operate in, and to remember, present your request in a way that meets their needs, not yours. This is another great perspective that I have adopted that has opened up new doors. It's not about me. Remember, like sales 101, it is not about me. It is about them. So I need to understand what type of schedule they're in. If they're a manager schedule, fantastic. Show me your first hole in your schedule, we'll book it. But if they're a maker, I am never going to ask them for a tiny little meeting. So I'm going to be more creative. So I wanted to leave that with you guys. Challenge it, because I know that when you create connection, there is just so much opportunity, but we always have to make sure that we are doing it in a way that meets their needs, not ours. All right, until next time, we will see you then.